are listening to Voice of the Fans Sportscast, brought to you by none other than the voices of the fans.
Live on YouTube for Friday, the 13th of December. I'm Randy Kure with another edition of Voice of the Fans Canada. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are watching live on YouTube or if you have downloaded tonight's episode off your favorite podcast catcher, be sure to follow Voice of the Fans Canada at VOF Canada on YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. On tonight's episode, it's all about basketball. And once again, social media has allowed me to introduce myself to tonight's panel. Of course, basketball is a global game, and I'm thrilled to say that tonight's episode is as global as basketball itself. Surfing YouTube, I came across a couple of passionate podcasters who have graciously agreed to join me for tonight. I do say that it is Friday, the 13th of December, but I think my esteemed panelists may respectfully disagree. They are the hosts of the These Guys Got Next podcast. Joining me from Auckland, New Zealand, co-host Elijah Fairfiu is here. Eli, thank you so much for joining me. Kia ora.
Hey, kia ora, all the way from New Zealand. And yeah, as you mentioned, it's Saturday. It's daytime here in New Zealand. As you can tell by the light reflecting on me from outside and probably Rav's background as well. But yeah, kia ora. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, no, the pleasure is definitely mine. And speaking of Rav, his professional life has taken him to Sydney, Australia, which is where he's joining me tonight. But he's a proud New Zealander, and like Eli and like myself, proud Sri Lankan. His name is Ravindu Patharana. Rav, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining me as well.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Really grateful that you've got me and Eli here to speak some basketball. Yeah, I'm going awesome, man. Looking forward to this episode.
No, as am I, absolutely. And before we get into it, fellas, I mean, I don't really know how much we do have in common. I mean, it's Friday where I live in Toronto. It's Saturday, as you guys mentioned, over your way. It's right now it's currently -5 degrees with a wind chill of -11. And so before we get into it, what's the temperature like over your way? And please be gentle.
It's probably approaching a mid to high 20 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit or so, but yeah.
Well, we follow Celsius here, so as well.
There you go.
So,
we got a similarity there. There you
go. That's right. Yeah.
Right. You say me mid 20s, going up to I think 29 or something later today. So yeah, it's running truly in summertime.
Well, hey, we had a good run in Canada with the summer of 2024, and we definitely have to share the wealth. So yeah, no, hopefully you guys are having a great. We'll have a great summer when summer does begin over your way. So I think I might have to forgive myself as we start the episode tonight, guys, because I'm really intrigued in how people from your part of the world consume not only basketball, of course, but sports and North American sports altogether. And it's just obviously the following of basketball. It goes without saying, it being an international game. But with regards to basketball, as a Canadian, it's definitely exploded over the last 30 years. The Raptors are celebrating their 30th season as we speak. And basketball has really definitely taken off and has skyrocketed in popularity. And Eli, you had mentioned that basketball, and Rob mentioned that basketball is really gaining in popularity as well. And so to start, where does basketball rank with the rest of sports in New Zealand?
Well, I guess for New Zealand, the first thing you think of when it comes to sports is probably the All Blacks if you're outside from New Zealand, and rugby, our national rugby team. But basketball is definitely skyrocketing, or definitely has skyrocketed over the last decade or so. It's the fastest growing sport in our country, and you can sort of tell with the number of high schoolers who are playing the sport. Since 2000, the sport has jumped 61% in terms of participation in basketball. At the current rate, if it continues going in this trajectory, it will be the number one sport for high schoolers by 2026, which is amazing to think about. It will overtake rugby in terms of participation. I think a lot of it has to do with Steven Adams ever since he was drafted in 2013 by the Thunder. I think that's opened up, I guess, the exposure of the NBA to a lot of New Zealanders or people on the side of the world. But also, I guess the NBA as a whole is just so easy to consume nowadays. Like, you look on your phone and you scroll and you see highlight reels of big dunks or big plays, and it's so easy to consume on cable TV, or as we I guess our cable provider here, Sky TV, ESPN. We have ESPN over here, which plays NBA stuff, and NBA Game Pass as well. So there's a lot of content that can be easily consumed on the side of the world. So I definitely think it's one of the fastest growing sports, and I'd probably say it's, in a couple years' time, I wouldn't be surprised if it approaches top 5 or even top 3 in terms of sport in New Zealand.
I'm for me, like I follow soccer, but truthfully, I don't really follow soccer in Europe. I'm more so of a Toronto FC guy, Major League Soccer. How would you gauge in terms of, is it difficult to say follow, whether it be the National Basketball Association or say UEFA with soccer in Europe? Like, considering where you guys are in the world, is it that much difficult? Is it difficult at all to follow, say, sports outside of New Zealand, Australia? Because for me, like, I don't really follow, and I don't really have a connection to, say, soccer in Europe.
Because I don't think there's any limitations to us, accessing sports outside of our country. But I do think, in terms of, as I mentioned before, basketball, so easy to scroll on social media. But again, and it's that connection, as you just mentioned, right? And I think the connection for a lot of fans on the side was Steven Adams, which pretty much opened up why a lot of New Zealanders are into NBA. And with that, a lot of the superstars that have come on board, like, obviously, as casual fans would know, LeBron James, easily the biggest name in basketball. Now we're opening up to guys like Luka Doncic and Anthony Edwards or Victor Wembanyama, probably names that casual fans won't really know. But I think because of the way basketball has exploded in New Zealand, those names are becoming a lot more familiar on the side of the globe, which is awesome to see as an American sports fan myself.
Rob, I don't know if you or Eli follow baseball much, but the World Series, of course, had the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers, two of the more recognizable sporting franchises, definitely in North America, dare I say the world. And there's always been this complex of, the popular teams needs to be a contender for its respective championship to gain that international appeal. You think about the Lakers and the Bulls and the Celtics to a degree. Is that something that you agree with? I mean, because obviously we're seeing teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder just have a great start to the season, or expected to do well in in the seasons ahead. But I mean, take a look at the Golden State Warriors. I mean, I remember what the Warriors were like without Steph Curry, and now they're one of the top teams in the NBA and has quite a following in the globally, dare I say. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of the Lakers and Celtics have more of, I guess, the market share in terms of jerseys here in NZ when you walk around the street. That's going to like the LeBron Lakers or the Kobe, the Magics. Even going back to Celtics, more you see the sort of Tatum's as of recent, and Larry Bird's quite a popular one. Like you mentioned, yeah, Golden State Warriors, absolutely. Especially with the dominant run they had in the mid 2010s, their popularity has increased massively. But the one team that kind of stands out during a lot of these periods of time, or stood the test of time, is OKC. We see a lot of Steven Adams jerseys because him being a Kiwi and his popularity. A lot of old school Russell Westbrook jerseys, and I guess this popularity is going to carry on given how OKC has been performing over the last couple of seasons. But weirdly enough, you do see a lot of Ja Morant jerseys as well. It's just like Eli mentioned, it's just so accessible in terms of seeing his highlight plays across social media.
And of course, the link with Oklahoma City and Steven Adams. I mean, it goes without saying. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if the Toronto Raptors caught anybody's attention, especially not only during the championship run of 2019, but they did make the Eastern Conference Finals and had a pretty strong run through the decade. Of course, that LeBron James fellow was a bit of a thorn in our side when he was with Cleveland. But for the Raptors, what other teams are out there? Maybe a Portland Trail Blazers when Damian Lillard was there. You think about the Atlanta Hawks with Trae Young. I mean, can random teams as well, say, garner attention, maybe in a country like New Zealand?
Yeah, I mean, two of our mates in our circle, they follow the Minnesota Timberwolves, so that's their team. So it is. I mean, Minnesota, relatively small market team, and you'd expect them to follow, like when you take the general population, you'd expect them to follow one of the bigger market teams, but there are still the populace who have the smaller market fans.
Yeah, and Anthony Edwards is definitely bringing a lot of excitement to Minnesota. And as you were mentioning Steven Adams, and I can imagine how revered he is in a basketball sense for the people of New Zealand. And I could definitely see a comparison between Canada and New Zealand with the geographic rivalry that New Zealand has with Australia, and of course with Canadians in the United States. Eli, of course, Australia has had a pretty established history in the NBA. You think about Andrew Bogut, and Ben Simmons, of course, was drafted number 1 overall as well, but he's kind of stubbed his toe recently. Do Australian basketball players, grab the attention of New Zealand sports fans as well, especially in a sport like basketball?
Short answer, no, unfortunately. So that probably tells you how much of a rivalry there still is between New Zealand and Australia, given that we don't really support the Australian players. I think part of that's probably because we have our own guy in the league now in Steven Adams. But I guess before a guy like Sean Marks, who was the first Kiwi in the NBA, came along, there wasn't really anyone for New Zealanders back then, 30 years ago, to really support or root for. So I think you looked at a guy like Luke Longley, who was a championship winner with the Chicago Bulls. He was an Australian. So I guess a lot of people on our side of the world saw him and thought, well, that's probably the closest we can get to a Kiwi, having an Australian do so well in the league back then. So that was probably who a lot of fans sort of found a connection to. I think now that we have our own guy in the league and Stephen Adams, then it's a lot easier to connect with him. But I think the other parts of that is that Australians in the league are so commonplace now. We're sort of just used to seeing so many successful players like, Dante Exum's in the league, Paddy Mills, Ben Simmons, as you mentioned. People forget Kyrie Irving was born in Australia, which is something that can slip over people's heads as well. But I think as a whole, I think it's more international players that we sort of gravitate towards, those guys like Luka and Wemby, rather than just Australian players.
Definitely. And Sean Marks, of course, did have a cup of coffee, started his career with the Toronto Raptors, and definitely had an established career as an NBA executive. Also really interested to learn the state of women's basketball in New Zealand. Of course, women's basketball has definitely taken off over the last number of years. I mean, the interest that Kobe Bryant did have before his untimely passing, and Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese have definitely taken the WNBA to new heights. It'll be really exciting, Rav, when the NBA begins in Toronto. The Tempo will start in 2026, and was wondering, what the WNBA has like the response of the WNBA over the last couple of years in New Zealand.
I wouldn't necessarily say there was a big spike. Like you mentioned, two biggest names, right, which cause a lot of media uproar in terms of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and their rivalry, especially in the college side of things. But you see those things come through social media, but it is not necessarily very popular. In saying that, like Eli made a really good point, how 2026 basketball is meant to be the most popular sport in secondary school or high school for those in North America and Canada. There is massive growth for women's basketball, especially in the New Zealand league, where they are going to be getting twice as much money as the players did compared to last season. And also the schedules are more aligned, allowing players to go play overseas, as well as playing in the New Zealand leagues. I guess the really cool thing is that's opened up additional revenue with contracts they've secured with the US TV channels. And the really cool thing about this, it'll have a massive effect on the grassroots level as well, because when you think about women's sport, girls necessarily don't want to pursue sports because of the lack of money available. But once they see, okay, cool, this is going to be a lucrative outcome and a promising career, we can definitely see a lot of young girls pick up the basketball and carry on.
It definitely seems that a lot of corporate support is definitely trickling in from for not only the WNBA, NBA, but you think of soccer leagues as well, all throughout the world. Definitely opportunities there for sure. I was kind of interested, as you guys have been saying, that basketball is, reaching new heights and gaining a lot more popularity, as it is in Canada as well. And, with rugby and cricket being as popular as it is in New Zealand, obviously ice hockey is first and foremost amongst my countrymen and women. And but there is a real concern because of concussions. And as an observer, I've never played ice hockey myself, but there definitely seems to be a reluctance for parents to getting their kids into hockey. Obviously, it's still number one. But when you think of basketball and the incredible footprint that Canada is starting to develop in the NBA, you think of sports like tennis as well. I mean, hey, Denis Shapovalov and Bianca Andreescu, who won the U.S. Open a few years back. With rugby itself, guys, where do you see it 10 years from now? I mean, is it still going to be as popular? I assume it is, but I mean, do you think enrollment may start to fall because of the potential for serious injury with kids?
I think so. I think we're already starting to see it in high schools in terms of the participation numbers and why parents are choosing not to have their kids in contact sports. I think basketball is probably seen as a safer sport compared to rugby. And rugby's, made an effort over the last few years to, in terms of rules, changing the rules around high tackles or, head-on-head contact collisions, that sort of thing, in order to try and keep the game as safe as possible. And they're making a better effort in terms of checking for concussions, and, team doctors there's a lot of time. They're taking a lot of time to check on their players. So there's a lot of health and safety improvements in that regard. But I guess looking towards the future, it's maybe not so much the safety thing. It's more of like a marketing thing. That's sort of the issue in terms of rugby at the moment, in terms of promoting the sport. That's sort of, I guess, the number one problem, along with the safety aspect of rugby. But I think in the future, I think it won't completely decline, but I think we're slowly seeing a slow decline, but it will still be among one of the top sports in the country regardless.
Yeah,
just to add
and
on to that,
please wrap.
I was just going to say, just adding on to that, in Australia, rugby league is way more popular because it is a better marketed product. Especially the pace of the game is a lot quicker. That's what you generally see as the years go on, because people want to see things happen fast. They want to see things quick. Unfortunately, with rugby union, that is not the case, but with league, we can see there's a different story. So yeah, I do definitely agree with Eli in terms of the declination of the sport.
Yeah, you may find it surprising, but rugby is quite popular within the high school ranks, especially back in my day, high school and for both boys and girls rugby. But like soccer, Canadians never didn't really see a opportunity to pursue a long career in that particular sport, and they do focus all their resources in hockey. And I think it is the exact same dynamic where the cost of the game, and more specifically with the injuries, still think it would be number one, like rugby is over your way. But I think there's going to be some changes, some more changes that have to take place, just like in rugby.
I think that's the other reason why basketball is so popular, is because it's so accessible. Like, all you need is a ball and a hoop. And I think now in New Zealand, you pretty much drive to every single park and there's always going to be a hoop there. And I know that our governing body in terms of basketball, their plan is to have a hoop within 2 kilometer radius of anyone or at any time. That's sort of their big goal at the moment. So it's so easy to just get a basketball and go out and find some mates and play some basketball, compared to rugby, where there's quite a lot more that you sort of need to, and you talked about the cost of the game. So I think in that regard, that's sort of why basketball's sort of growing in popularity on the side of the world.
But what about cricket? I can imagine that. I'm assuming, of course, that cricket maybe is either 1A or just behind rugby in terms of popularity in New Zealand. And as we're talking about the safety of sports and such, baseball, and of course being a lot more affordable than, say, ice hockey, at least in my way. Baseball is a sport where parents are more inclined to take their kids. Obviously, cricket has a strong passion in New Zealand, but has that moved the needle at all?
Cricket. Okay, I'm gonna give you like a bit of an example in terms of what my experience was, because I did play cricket. I still play cricket. So when I started high school back in 2011, we had, I believe, we went down to the 9th 11, which with social teams as well as your first 11s and all that. However, when I left school, or even last year, I remember the school barely put up like a third 11. We had to the school had to scrap for players and numbers. So there is a massive declination in terms of the numbers, or parents wanting to go as well, because when you think about it, cricket's a long sport. You spend 8 hours in the sun kind of watching your kid play, and parents don't necessarily want that because they seem like, oh, my Saturday is kind of wasted. So that as another contributor to why the numbers of cricket players are declining as well.
I'm a little surprised because, I don't follow cricket. I'm a little embarrassed, Rob, as a Sri Lankan. But I mean, actually, my cousin who emigrated from Sri Lanka was a part of the Canadian national team and got to travel all over the place as part of the Canadian national cricket team. But knowing that 20 over matches and test matches are not so much a thing of the past, that 20 over matches have become a lot more popular, but still there is that reluctance that because it's too long of a day for your kid for kids to be out, is what you're saying.
Yep, 100%. Like similar thing you can kind of see with how people aren't watching rugby anymore because of it's a slower game compared to rugby league. So same principle, I guess, applies. People are wanting to see more of that fast-paced, fast action, like quick result type of sport. That's where they lean into the T20s. I'm going to be honest, I'm a firm believer of the test match because cricket's a mental sport at the end of the day, so that is a graft. But yeah, sports are trending towards this. I need that instant gratification in a sense. I need to be done with it as fast as I can and get a good result. Or if you lose, you get a bad result.
Yeah, no, baseball has definitely done a lot to speed up the game, and it's still the same dynamic of 3 outs and 9 innings, but they have cut it say a good 5-10%, and it's not so much a 3.5-hour match as it was in years past. So yeah, definitely get what you're saying there. Back to basketball, guys, and but before we went to air, I got to share that I scratched a major bucket list moment going to a Raptor game in New York City. It was coincidentally enough R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley's first game back in New York facing the Knicks. Jalen Brunson absolutely torched my Raptors. It was brutal, but it was a blast. Obviously, Madison Square being the Mecca. How about yourselves? Rob, I know that you mentioned that you went to a Clipper game when you were traveling years back, but Eli, we could start with you. What's your bucket list moment regarding basketball that you need to scratch off one of these days?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, one's sort of passed. So for those who don't realize, Rav and I are both Clippers fans. We're both LA Clippers fans, which makes for a very interesting listen when you tune into these guys got next. But we were a huge fan of the Lob City Clippers with Chris Paul. Chris Paul's my favorite player of all time. Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, that trio there. So unfortunately, never got to watch them live, which would have been an awesome thing to tick off the bucket list. But I think because we're not sure when this guy's career is going to wind down, but I'd love to see LeBron James live in person. Just the opportunity, like even if I'm in the last row of the arena, I'll be happy just to see LeBron in person. So that's probably the big one on my bucket list.
It's funny. I had a chance to see 3 LeBron games. It was Bosch's first game back in Toronto as a member of the Miami Heat. LeBron did play in that game. A friend of mine a couple years ago had tickets to the Laker game, invited me. LeBron sat, and I was in San Antonio, Texas for a work-related event. Spurs were playing the Lakers, and of course, LeBron sat that game too. So I mean, that was me and LeBron are not on good terms. So, but did get a chance to see him, and hopefully, you guys you could as well. Intuit Dome just seems like an absolute gem, and yeah, Ballmer's really tricking out his toy there. Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say just in line with your bucket list when you ticked off a game at the Mecca, specifically a playoff game at the Mecca where the Knicks win, and I just want to see the city go wild. I predicted the Knicks are going to win the championship this year. So
Okay.
if there was an opportunity for me to get across to watch a game, that'd be awesome. But yeah, that's definitely a bucket list.
Yeah, I found it amazing because, truth be told, so Toronto to New York is like a 1 hour flight, and Toronto to Detroit is like a 4 hour drive. And I saw a Raptor game in Detroit, and the acoustics were so loud, like it honestly hurt my ears in Detroit because I guess so many Raptor fans made the trip, and in MSG it was a little bit quiet. I was pretty surprised about that, but I mean, obviously, yeah, when it comes to the Mecca and Madison Square, I mean, it's just as great as it is while seeing it on TV. Obviously, 10 times better. But the Knicks, so thinking the Knicks are going to win the championship, Rap. It's been since 1973. You think Tibbs? Because he does stretch out his starting five, and doesn't really use that bench. You think they could last? OG Anunoby, hey, I know firsthand. He is pretty snake bitten with the injuries. But you think they could ride it out?
Yeah, I back him. I mean, me and Eli did discuss that the bench depth is what they're going to struggle with. But we got Mitch Robinson coming back in Jan. Pressure Chua came back from injury recently, so they do have a little bit of depth. But it's just like you said, how long can they stretch this out? And especially with Tibbs's gameplay, because there've been several games this season where the bench or individually played less than 10 minutes each. So it'd be really interesting to see how it pans out in the playoffs.
Sure. Eli, we have obviously we're talking a number of other topics here, but since we are talking about who Rap thought was going to win the championship, I mean, are you along the same lines as the Knicks as well?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me this, Randy, because this is going to be really embarrassing. So I may or may not have picked the Philadelphia 76ers to win the season. So you can sort of tell by Raul's reaction. But yeah, things haven't really gone off. They haven't really done too well to start the season. Let's just say that. But I think my big reason was because I think with Joel playing less games, I felt he could be healthy enough to be right for the playoffs, which is at the end of the day when you need to be on the court. Unfortunately, I made this pick before PG, poor George, hyperextended his knee, and now he's done it twice already this season. So that's not ideal. But I guess on the bright side, you look at a guy like Jaron McCain, who's stepped up in the absence of PG and Embiid, and Embiid's slowly starting to come back here and there. They've strung a couple of wins here and there over the last week or so. So look, fingers crossed they can sneak into the play-in at least. I'll take that. But yeah, that was who I picked to go all the way this season.
Yeah, I mean, hey, when you have a big three like Embiid, Maxey, and PG, I mean, you're touching all corners of the court there. And yeah, I mean, how could you? I mean, I think a lot of people were thinking that the Sixers were going to take it. Joel Embiid aside, I got to tell you guys, I have never been a fan of Nick Nurse. I mean, he has obviously, he has a special place in Raptors fans' heart. He won the championship. He was the coach, of course. But Dwayne Casey could have led that team. I mean, love to get your thoughts on. Personally, I think that Nick Nurse does a huge disservice when he does all the dramatics when a bad call doesn't go his way. Or bad call, quote unquote. I mean, to put you guys on the spot here, what are your thoughts on Nick Nurse? Because to me, I don't think that he's a difference maker at all.
I do think he's slightly overrated, and I think the championship sort of has helped his cause quite a bit. So I think without the championship, I don't think we talk about Nick Nurse as one of the, I guess, in the upper echelon of coaches, even if he is in the upper echelon. But I don't really think he is. I think he's, I'd say, middle of the road in terms of a coach.
Yeah,
You can kind of put him in that Doc Rivers bracket as well. You take the chip away from Doc Rivers, but what's he done? So similar perspective to Eli in terms of Nick Nurse.
Well, I mean, and it was a pretty poor start to be at the beginning of the year, but I mean, the Bucks are turning it around, and I mean, but the consensus was there, Rav. I mean, Doc Rivers. I mean, 2008 was a long time when he won the championship with the Celtics. And what's his record in Game Sevens? I think it's like 0-4 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that strong. And I mean, flip a coin. I'm guessing people are going to lean Doc over Nick Nurse, but I mean, hey, maybe I'm just a jaded Raptors fan, but that's neither here nor there.
That's fine because we're jaded Clippers fans, so we can. That's why we have these thoughts on Doc Rivers. He's had a whole lot of talent for nothing to show for it. So that's sort of our thoughts there.
Well, I mean, another spontaneous topic here, but how surprised were you that Kawhi Leonard left Toronto for the Clippers? I mean, I guess hindsight being what it is, Kawhi had an opportunity to go home. I mean, it's not San Diego where he's from, but Los Angeles and is a lot closer than Toronto. And, personally, I thought that there was a real chance that Kawhi was going to stick around in Toronto. I mean, look, the shot, the Game 7 shot against the Philadelphia 76ers in the East semifinal in 2019, and obviously winning the championship. I mean, were you guys surprised, number one? And, I mean, obviously as a follow-up, I mean, are you surprised that things haven't worked out in LA?
I'll let you go, Eli. I'll go after you.
I guess
I've got some thoughts on this.
No, it's fine. I guess the only way I thought Kawhi had a chance of staying in Toronto was if he had won the chip. Because I think if he didn't win the chip, I thought he was going to leave Toronto because I felt as though he was always going to come back to LA. But then when they did win the championship that season, and I was thinking, oh, maybe he won't leave Canada and he'll decide to hang around. But when he did the sign with the Clippers, that did catch me a little bit by surprise. And I guess that leads to the whole domino effect of Paul George eventually coming to the Clippers as well. So in terms of how that era has, the 2-1-3 era has worked out, I am disappointed that the era hasn't panned out as much as well as we thought we'd like it for it to be. I think our best chance was definitely the COVID season. I feel like that was a series where we were up 3-1 against the Nuggets, and we choked that unfortunately in the bubble. I'm just disappointed to say the least. I'm not sure what Rav's thoughts are on the whole era.
Mate, ditto that. I was genuinely surprised. Coming back home was in the plans for him, but when you think, I've won a chip with a pretty decent team around me, why would you go kind of throw that away and have to rebuild with this other team and kind of start from scratch essentially? So I was genuinely shocked in terms of the move. I still remember the day one of my mates just rushed up to me and said, "Mate, Clippers got Kawhi." I was like, I can't really swear on this one. Very, very surprised. It's just been very disappointing. It's just had championship hopes, especially 20 season, 21-22. The injuries came along and then it kind of derailed, and it was just like, can we hold on? What was the biggest question? Then last year, it was a nice surge with Russ and Harden joining. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm really surprised at their performance of the season. I had them as the 13th seed, not doing great. But shout out to Norman Powell, man is carrying. Ex-Raptor too, so
I know. It hurts my heart. I mean, I'm guessing your reaction to when Kawhi signed with the Clippers was as opposite as mine as the weather is in our respective countries.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, Norman Powell, Raptors fans knew what LA was going to get, and I mean, of course, he had that cup of coffee in Portland. But Norman Powell is definitely one of those leaders for sure. I am battling this coffee. I thought it was going to be good, but I do apologize if I have to catch my breath. But yeah, no, I joined with Eli Fiu and Rav Pathanamrana from the These Guys Got Next podcast. This is Voice of the Fans Canada. So, Eli, I guess it's fair to say that you have the Sixers as the biggest surprise this season. I mean, a lot of people like yourself was thinking that they were going to win the championship, and they've just been an absolute mess. Fair to say that the Sixers start the season has been your biggest eyebrow raiser?
I wouldn't say the biggest. It's definitely been one of the surprises. For me, the big surprise has been the Golden State Warriors, because I actually picked them not to make the playoffs at all, without any hesitation. I just thought, with Steph carrying the team, who else on the Warriors can really help Steph out? And it turns out the answer is all of them, because they've got one of the deepest rosters in the NBA, and they've proven that this season. I think the questions around, any questions around Draymond Green, whether he was going to slow down, Jonathan Kuminga, could he still fit in with this Warriors team? Could Andrew Wiggins recapture his form from a couple of seasons ago have been answered? But they've also had guys like Buddy Hield, who's been the Klay Thompson replacement, and he's excelled in that role. Guys like Kyle Anderson, Brandon Pajemski, Moses Moody, Kevon Looney, Lindy Waters, Gary Payton, like that whole rotation there have each of those players have contributed at some point this season that sort of led to why they had such a fast start. And I did not see them at all having, this strong of a start. Obviously, things have sort of slowed down a little bit with the Warriors now, but I guess the way they started definitely caught me off guard.
Rav, how about you?
I've actually gone the Magic. Actually, like I was very surprised. Like Paolo went down pretty early, with his torn oblique, and then very grateful that Franz was able to carry this team and literally put them on his shoulders, to pull off what he's been able to pull off until he blew his oblique as well, unfortunately. But yeah, like they're what, third seed at the moment in the East,
Yes.
which is awesome. But yeah, like it's really surprising. Like Eli and I discussed this in the previous episode. Outside of Suggs and Goga Batase, no one's averaging over 10 points. I think KCP is next with 8 points something. But it's really good. Like they showed a lot of fight in that Bucks game in the quarterfinal. Just shows that that they have a lot of dogs in that team. And in saying that, Chuck mentioned recently that the Magic is where OKC were a couple of years ago. So hopefully the Magic can step up once both Franz and Paolo are back.
I mean, they definitely. OKC with the firepower and the young guns that they do have, you have to wonder if there is something happening at Disney World there. Like you said, with Suggs and Wagner and Anthony alike. We were talking about Philly and the slow start to their season and everything. And obviously, the three of us have caught comments that Joel Embiid has made, saying how much he's done for the city of Philadelphia, and that, he puts his body and life on the line as if he's a cop. And thinking that, Philly fans, for lack of a better term, and I'm paraphrasing, should be grateful, or that he's done what he has done so far. I mean, hasn't really equaled a NBA Finals appearance, let alone a conference championship appearance. But I mean, Embiid has said that he's not wasn't going to play in back-to-backs, and Eli, it's really easy to grill him on that, but I mean, he has not had a full slate of games, and he's not had a full run during any season of his 10+ year career. He's getting to that age where he does have to maybe pump the brakes like any other athlete. Do you think that he's valid in what he's saying? Like, I mean, I guess like in terms of his legacy, is it going to really be soured? Because I mean, I think he has a valid point. He just said it in the absolute worst way possible.
I guess the thing with Joel is, I guess the easiest way to ask yourself about a player's legacy is to think of the first thing you think of when you think of a player. And to me, when you think of Joel Embiid, it's injuries and playoff disappointment, which I think, and this is the same Joel Embiid who for the first couple of seasons was facing questions around his injuries because he didn't play for the first couple of seasons because he was nursing his foot. So he had to overcome that narrative in order to, rebuild himself into one of the best players or one of the best centers in the NBA. And I think he did well to reclaim that narrative for himself. But now I think this season in particular has really hurt his legacy because of, of course, the news and the reports around his knee and how serious the injury actually is or actually was. And as you mentioned, the comments about not playing back-to-backs, getting called out by Tyrese Maxey in a team meeting as well, probably didn't help out. And we're not even halfway through the season. And, I think all these, the sort of disappointment around Joel Embiid and sort of the injuries he's had to face throughout his career, the most games he's played in the season, I think, is 68. And that was a few seasons ago. And I think the next season he played 66. So that was probably the healthiest stretch of his career. Healthiest, it's not even like 70 games. So, I think his legacy's, definitely soured because of the season, which is sad because I want him to do well. And I think the only way he's going to do well is if they reach the conference finals, at least. They haven't even reached the conference finals since Joel's time in Philly, which I think is really disappointing. So unless he does that and somehow wins a championship with Philly, which I don't think is going to happen, then I think his legacy is definitely going to be soured.
I really thought that Joel had that chance to be such a role model because everybody remembers how much he was crying so hard when the Raptors beat the Sixers in the 19 East semifinal. But what I remembered truthfully was how Embiid congratulated all of those Raptors after that devastating shot by Kawhi Leonard. And he could have easily sucked off and just gone to the locker room and, not lose with grace. But he stayed on that court. And as devastated as he was, he, congratulated all of those Raptors. And now he just is acting like such a mess. It's disappointing to see. It really is. Rav, I'd love to get your thoughts. I don't know if Giannis Antetokounmpo is anywhere near what Joel Embiid has done these days, but I remember when he was drafted, as I'm sure you do as well, and how green he was in the sense of how eager he was to make a mark and give to the city of Milwaukee, this team and city that gave him such an opportunity, in the NBA. But we're seeing quite a bit of, I'm seeing a change in terms of what potentially happened to Adrian Griffin with the dismissal. The fact that his brother Thanasis is still on the team and has been a bit of a whipping boy in terms of him only being there because Big Brother is insisting that he gets that chance, gets that roster spot. But I am wondering, I mean, obviously Giannis has a couple of good years left in him, but do you think that he's going to remain a Buck? And do you think that he is going to finish his, begin and end his career in Milwaukee?
I think he's going to begin and end his career in Milwaukee, but I I think there'll be a stretch where he'll want to compete with a contending team, because you think about Dame's coming to the latter end of his career. He maybe got one good season left in him after this one. Giannis, like you said, yeah, 3 or 4 maybe good seasons. But you also got to think about the role players around this team. Like Chris Middleton's quite old. Again, all of these stuff we've touched in our podcast a lot in terms of when we do the previews and the breakdowns of each team. Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton could potentially move in the upcoming season if they decline their player option. And again, depending on the cap space, which I don't think they have a lot. I think they've got 50 mil outside of Dame and Giannis if they were to clean house. Like, it's not a lot left. So how much can they do with that much little money? Meaning they might have to ship off Giannis and go into a rebuild mode.
Yeah, and of course, a city like Milwaukee and the Bucks, they've definitely had difficulty in luring the free agent talent needed to win the championship. But Eli, one team obviously that doesn't have difficulty in garnering top free agents are the LA Lakers. But you have to think a little differently these days, especially with what's been going on. Obviously, LeBron won a championship with the Lakers, and I have to say, I don't know if you guys agree, but to win the NBA championship in that COVID bubble was, to me, I think one of the most emotionally challenging. And I give definitely a lot of respect to the Lakers for doing that. But that was a long time ago, Eli, and now LeBron's son, of course, the news of him being drafted and getting a chance to play was all the buzz around NBA circles. And of course, before that, with the hiring of JJ Redick. What are your thoughts on the Lakers, especially the last couple of seasons?
Yeah, I'm purposely not going to talk about Bronny just because I think he's a bit of a non-factor this season. Although the whole hoopla around him being drafted obviously made news, and I'm glad that they got that moment out of the way with LeBron and Bronny being on the court together. I think that was an awesome touching moment for father and son. But I probably won't reflect on that too much. But in terms of JJ Redick, obviously when a new coach comes in, you think this is a chance for a fresh start, a fresh chapter. I don't want to say they've been underwhelming because I wasn't sure what my expectations were of JJ Redick as a coach because it's his first time. Like, what are we supposed to? We're just going to base what he does based off his podcast or how he analyzes on ESPN, etc. But
also the relationship he had with LeBron, right?
Of course, and so I think I wasn't sure what my expectations were of JJ, but I guess if I could describe him in one word, it would be pedestrian. In that I don't think JJ's moved the needle as such in LA, but I don't think JJ's the problem as well. I think the roster they have around LeBron and AD is awful. Like, compared to 2020 when they won the championship, they had some great veterans on that team and guys who could defend, shoot, rebound. Dwight Howard, KCP, Kuzma, a young Kuzma, Danny Green, Avery Bradley, those types of players. And then you look at the current roster, guys like Austin Reeves and Dalton Knecht, who, of course, they show some flashes on offense, but defensively, they're not as strong. D'Angelo Russell has been benched this season, which probably tells you all you need to know about D'Lo's time in LA. So I guess, I wouldn't say, I think they haven't changed from when Dalvin Ham was coach of the Lakers. But at the end of the day, I don't think the coach is the problem. I think it's really the construction of this roster that's really let the Lakers down over the last couple of seasons.
Well, here's a question. Is LeBron the problem? Or has he become the problem? I mean, it seems from my vantage point that he's the one running the show.
Yeah, I think it's easier to point the finger at the two stars. And I think they did a nice switch this season and making AD the number one option, which I think has really worked well. But I think with LeBron, he's having to do so much for a guy that's approaching 40 years old, which shouldn't be the case if a guy who's winding down the clock and he's near the end of his career is having to carry the load because his teammates can't really offer much on their end. So I think he's unnecessarily having to do too much which I think is creating a problem for the Lakers, I feel.
Rob, do you have any thoughts? I mean, could LeBron be the one running to the show? And like, I was wondering, with the JJ Redick hiring and eventually Bronny getting drafted, that it was a deterrent for free agents to go to the Lakers. I mean, DeMar DeRozan, I mean, he's born and raised in Compton. He signs in Sacramento. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that the DeRozan one is interesting, but it is a good fit for the Sacramento Kings, especially with how they've been performing last week. I'd say they had a couple of good wins. But going back to LeBron, I think there is an element of him still running the show, partly to do because of his knowledge and experience in the league. But again, playing kind of favorites with hiring his mate and JJ Redick and getting his son involved. But yeah, like I'm gonna agree in terms of it's the roster. The Lakers do need to make a big push come the trade deadline to put some support around LeBron, and he'll definitely have a big influence on that.
Yeah, right now the Lakers are in 8th in the Western Conference, so they do have the chance to play in the play-in, and we'll see if the Lakers are able to continue and making another appearance to the playoffs. Very quickly, love to get your thoughts on the NBA Cup. Of course, the semifinals are going to take place, today for you guys, tomorrow for me. But the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to take the Houston Rockets, and those same Milwaukee Bucks are going to take the Atlanta Hawks in Las Vegas. Start with Rav. What are your thoughts on the NBA Cup? I mean, do you like this program, and do you think it's going to remain for the next few years?
I think the experiment worked by Adam Silver because they needed to get increased viewership throughout the mid-season games, because 82 games is a long season. I'm sure we'll touch on this shortly. But I definitely think that it's here to stay. Just especially like giving the players the prize money to incentivize them to play harder. So that's, I reckon it'll stay.
Yeah. Really love the Raptors jersey with the Vince Carter inspired dinosaur. I saw a social media post that you guys had, and was it Rav wearing the Raptor jersey, and Eli, you were wearing the Penny Hardaway throwback?
Yeah, the Penny Hardaway. Yep.
Yeah. The fact that you were wearing the Raptors jersey, that was a great photo, boys. Well done. Before we get into the last segment, fellas, obviously the big story is the insistence of load management, especially when it comes to the star players. With guys like LeBron, Kevin Durant is touching on 40. Steph Curry is pretty close to that way as well. I mean, the elite players of the league are in their late 30s. And an NBA season is a grind. What do you think the league is? How do you think they're going to take this issue? And how do you think they're going to find a solution to load management? Because there is a valid point that an 82-game season is not going to win you a championship per se. It is if you are healthy during the playoffs. Floor is open for you boys. What do you think?
I think they've already tried to fix the issue with the whole player participation policy and having that whole 65-game threshold to be eligible for awards, which I think it's a nice rule, and I understand the reason to bring that rule in. But I also think the rule affects sort of the younger players who may look to push for a return earlier than expected from the injuries. So I guess guys like we saw last season with Tyrese Halliburton when he came back early from his hamstring issue, and he pretty much re-aggravated it and had to be sidelined again. And he pretty much said on JJ Redick's podcast that it was because of that whole 65-game threshold that he had to come back. So I think I understand the policy being in place. I do think there's a few tweaks that may need to be made. But I guess my big thing around it, and they're never going to do this, the NBA, but they do need to reduce the number of games in the season from 82. But that's never going to happen because they need to generate more revenue for the league and get fans interested as well. So ideally, I'd trim it down to maybe 72 games, maybe to start off with. But I don't think the league's gonna do that.
Rob, what are your thoughts? Are you on the same line as Eli?
Yeah, very, very similar. It is good. Like, I mean, the late great Kobe Bryant was one who just strapped up regardless, right? Because especially, again, it just feels like I'm repeating myself because it's the same kind of trends that just keep coming up, which is valid and is important to speak about. Like, let's say Eli and me, for example. Right? I've been to one NBA game ever, right? And that's the game I was hoping like Kawhi would play and watching the Clippers play, but didn't play load management. You know, it's like people make the effort to come watch their favorite players play, and unfortunately, because of load management, they're not going to be able to experience what they had hoped for. It is a problem, and like Eli mentioned, I'm an advocate of reducing the number of games down, allowing these players to perform more frequently. So yeah, I think that's possibly an action that Adam Silver needs to consider.
It's really intriguing, because I'm for one am not for reducing the schedule. I do believe that there is something about back-to-backs. So isn't there a possibility now the season starts end of October and it runs through middle of June? Is there a possibility of extending the season towards July? I mean, 4th of July is obviously huge in the United States, Independence Day. Is there something to having, because in July, August, in North America, sports are very limited in terms of both basketball and American football not being on the calendar. There's that. I also am of the opinion, guys, that tickets get marked up because of a certain number of players. I mentioned to you guys that I spent a marked up price to go see the Lakers in San Antonio, only to have LeBron not play. What if they did give a sort of rebate or a discount if their respective stars don't play? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I mean, is between the two that I had suggested, especially with extending the season from middle of June to say July. I mean, that sounds a little bit more realistic, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it would, lessen the stress around players having to play if there's less back-to-backs. I guess the only argument against that would be every 4 years when the Olympics come around and you've got players committing to the Olympic cycle, and that pretty much adds a whole nother campaign to an NBA player's roster. But that's a every 4 years sort of problem. But I'm sure I agree with that suggestion. I think that's definitely something that could be more realistic. Yeah.
I mean, counterpoint, if I may,
of course,
is there's going to be a shorter span for the off season for players, like between, let's say, the NBA Finals and the first preseason game. There's going to be a very short amount of time for a player to actually recover and rest. But again, that the recovery and rest could come in the back of not having back-to-back. So there is pros and cons, but it's just another thing to be wary of. That's just the first thing that came to my mind.
Definitely valid for sure. But I guess because players do train, 12 months out of the year, 365 days a year, that that off season, of course, they do need to rest and recover, but only so many teams are eliminated, and as they get down to 2 teams. But Rav, I definitely agree with your point. It would be interesting to see what will take place in the years to come. Very quickly, guys, we are heading to the last segment of this episode, and it's a segment I like to call Straight Facts, Bro Relax. So, as you guys are now aware, I'm going to drop a statement on you. If you agree, you're going to say straight facts. If you disagree, please say bro relax, and feel free to tell me why. Eli, I've had the great opportunity to have roundtables with some great sportscasters in the U.S. and Mikey Domagala as well from Courtside Buzz, and posed a scenario to them of an exhibition tournament where the United States plays the rest of the world. You guys had just talked about, and Raph talked about the Olympics, and it's definitely really popular. My sister actually went to Paris and caught France, Japan, and brought home a Victor Wembanyama French jersey, which I absolutely love. And my 11-year-old nephew actually wore my Utah Watanabe Raptors jersey, and a couple of Japanese ladies really appreciated that. But I digress. I think that there really is something about this 7 or maybe 9 game series where the United States would play the rest of the world. Over the next 5 years, Eli, the USA will play the rest of the world in a 7 game series. Straight facts or bro relax?
I'm gonna say bro relax, but don't relax too much, Randy, because I do see this being a one-off fixture rather than 7 games. I think 7 games is a bit too much, but I mean, we talk about, the All-Star weekend is probably an area where I'd like to see this matchup take place. You bill it as Team USA, Olympic champions against the rest of the world. And obviously the way the league has expanded and grown over the last few years, they've got plenty of superstars who can fill up that rest of the world roster. Jokic, Luka, Wemby, Giannis, those sort of guys. And seeing them going up against Team USA, I mean, hopefully it'll be like a LeBron, KD, Steph Curry, if they're still around. Maybe put an asterisk next to Joel Embiid's name if he decides to play or not. But I love this to be a one-off fixture between these two teams, but I wouldn't go as far as to say a 7 game series.
No, I definitely see that. I think that there would be so much attention and so much interest from basketball, from a player's perspective, and I think they got to do something about that All-Star game. It's an absolute dog. I mean, the slam dunk competition. I mean, yeah, sure, there was a couple of one-offs where it was interesting. The 2016 NBA All-Star Weekend in Toronto, where Zach LaVine took Aaron Gordon, and a lot of people thought that Aaron Gordon deserved that slam dunk, as well as the one in Chicago where Dwayne Wade screwed him over. But no, whether it is a one-off or a 7 game series, I would absolutely love to see it. I mean, personally, I think the rest of the world would be the favorite. What about you guys?
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
100%. Because I guess you look at the American side, and it's not only, I guess, the guys who are aging or getting up there in age. It's sort of like, who are the big American superstars, right? Like coming through. Like you got Ant obviously coming through. A guy like Ja Morant's coming through. Zion, when healthy, can prove to be that player. But on the other side, the rest of the world, they've got absolute stacked talent. And I definitely think the world will be favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cooper Flagg, who projected to be the next big ticket, in college right now. And he's definitely coming through the ranks as well. And, last and certainly not least, Rav, as both you and Eli can assume, I'm a very proud Canadian. And, before your time, the Toronto Raptors were joined by the Vancouver Grizzlies in the NBA. And it was a short 6-year stint until Vancouver moved to Memphis. And really do believe a lot of basketball fans in my country thought that the city of Vancouver didn't really get a chance to be a true NBA city. It's been 20 years, over 22 years since the NBA has been out of Vancouver. But at some point in time, 10 years from now, the NBA will return to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada route. Straight facts or bro relax?
In 10 years, I'm gonna go bro relax. That's solely because the expansion itself for the NBA has taken so long to come to fruition, and they're still planning it, right? And I'm thinking teams like Seattle, cities like Seattle or Las Vegas, given their popularity, will get teams first, and given they're on the West Coast or the Western Conference, if you may, and putting a team on the western side in Vancouver will kind of throw off the balance. So they need to balance it out with a couple of cities out east, and then look at Vancouver. So yeah, maybe 10 plus years. Who knows? Who knows when Adam Silver decides to expand the league? First of all, so let's see. Let's see. And I really hope I didn't offend you off the back of the.
No, you're not my friend anymore. You're not my friend anymore. How dare you? But no, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. Obviously, Seattle, they had their team stolen. I think to a worse degree than Vancouver did. Such a huge following, they couldn't get an arena for that city. And Kevin Durant's first year was in Seattle, and then he and the rest of the team moved to Oklahoma City. And look at what that legacy that he created in Oklahoma City. And obviously with what the NBA has done, Summer League and the NBA Cup in Las Vegas, it's going to be a matter of time for sure that the NBA will go to Las Vegas. But guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This was really looking forward to this when we first connected and had the chance to organize this roundtable. Before we sign off, where can basketball fans find your incredible content?
Yeah, so they can jump on our content on YouTube. These Guys Got Next. Spotify as well, same name. On Instagram, we are at These Guys Got Next, and TikTok as well at These Guys Got Next. So yeah.
It's been an absolute treat, guys. Really love to do this again one day. Thank you so much for joining me.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Randy.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Very grateful.
For Elijah Fafiu and Ravindu Patharana, I am Randy Kure. This is Voice of the Fans Canada. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe. We will talk to you next time.